another week in review where I'm going to share with you guys the trades I read this week. And yeah, there's no graphic novels, just trades this week, mostly from Marvel and DC. And the first book I read for the week is Captain America, The Death of Captain America. This is a hardcover edition. And I thought that I had already read this, but apparently I hadn't yet. I think I read Fallen Sun, which kind of goes over some of this stuff too. There were a couple of different trades that came out around the time of the death of Captain America, and the whole mysterious plot, who did it. I don't want to reveal. If you have not read this story, I don't want to go into detail about who did it, because it was kind of a shocker. And it was decent. It wasn't that great like you would think such a huge moment in the history of Captain America would be like this great story, but this was really just a 3 out of 5 star rating book. I thought it was decent, but it wasn't great. And it talks about how Bucky wants to honor Cap's memory, and it leads into Bucky becoming the new Captain America. Of course, they don't reveal that in this book, but yeah, sorry if I spoiled it for you. If you didn't already know that Bucky was going to be Captain America, but it's an old story anyway. Okay, up next we have Spider-Man Birth of Venom. This is like a compilation trade. It's different than most trades you see nowadays. Most trades will collect so many issues in numerical order, but this is they kind of tried to pick from different volumes. Some were issues from Amazing Spider-Man, some are from Web of Spider-Man, some are from Fantastic Four, and there's brief, just a few pages from the Secret Wars. Now, I did already know where Venom came from. I knew that he came from, the planet that the Beyonders set up the Secret Wars. So I knew that much. And I remember vaguely reading some of these stories when I was a kid. And I have to say, I don't really care for the way this is set up, because this is way too much material. And I'm not the only one who thought this, because not only do they mention, the Secret Wars, they only took a couple pages from that story to show how Peter got the costume, but they kind of go into how Peter is using the suit and he's learning its capabilities, and I don't know if it was their intentions to let you know that this is what this Venom symbiote is capable of, that this is some of its, and they show how Peter thought he got rid of it. But there were some kind of differences. Venom is a great villain, but this is the early Venom. And Venom didn't bite the heads off of his victims. He would web up their heads so they couldn't breathe, which I thought was kind of weird, because I don't remember that being how Venom killed people. So that there were a few other issues, this Venom swings on webs just like Spider-Man, and it was just so different. And it's these are the old comics where, of course, they're really overly wordy, and they go into personal details about their lives and stuff, but they skipped out the part how Eddie Brock became Venom. All of a sudden, Peter Parker gets the Venom symbiote off of him, and they jump right to the next story where all of a sudden Eddie Brock already has the Venom. I don't know if did they ever write a story of how Eddie became Venom? Did he just randomly wake up one day and he was Venom? So that's why I'm saying why wasn't that included in the Birth of Venom, or was it just not ever written? So yes, Venom is a really cool villain. I do like him as a villain, but I just thought this was kind of weak. It was okay, so I only rated this 3 out of 5 stars. It is what it is, guys. It's old comics, and, it's a cool villain now, but this is how it started. I like big books, and I cannot lie. You other bookworms can't deny. Yeah, I know. I tried and failed. But, anyways, the next book is SpiderVerse, and I'm kind of glad that I had the opportunity to pick up this huge volume that is the complete SpiderVerse storyline in one book. So, of course, I already read half of this prior in other volumes. And, of course, there was a lot of filler. Some of it was good because they showcased some other Spider-Men from other universes. And then some of it was really corny, like this one part was really, really corny. I just couldn't get into that part. But, oh my god, this one, the punk rock Spider-Man was one of my favorites. Anarchic Spider-Man or whatever, but it was pretty darn cool. And then there were some other good stories. I will have to say, I did give this a 4 out of 5 star rating. There were times where I was like, man, does this book really deserve a 4-star rating? But a majority of this was good, even though I do have to admit it was much too long. Way too long. This could have been a lot shorter, because it is just massive. Okay, up next we have Batman Arkham Asylum Unhinged. And this is a video game adaptation of the Arkham City. Okay, because it says down here based on the hit video game Arkham City. So this has to be, in quite all honesty, this has to be the worst adaptation of a video game I have ever seen. Not that I have a lot to go on, because the only other video game adaptation I've ever read was the Injustice, which I thought was a pretty good job. They did a pretty good job doing Injustice, and they did such a good job with it that it's an ongoing series. Like, they're still doing books on it. But this was horrible, guys. I've never seen in any Batman books for the Penguin to have a British accent. And they do this scene where all the villains are putting the Joker on trial. And the Penguin goes up on the stand and he has a British accent. And that just killed it for me. That was just the moment where I was like, what the fuck is going on in this book? And in quite all honesty, I only gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. It was just so bad. The artwork was great. I mean, I liked the artwork, but you can't base whether a book's good or not just on the artwork alone. After that, I read Coffin Hill, Dark Endeavors. This is Volume 2. It has been a very long time since I've read Coffin Hill Volume 1. And you can't just go into this without having read the first volume. And one of my criticisms, and a couple other people thought the same thing for this, is that there's 2 storylines going on. There's a past storyline with a serial killer that Eve Coffin's trying to catch because she's a police officer who's also a witch, which I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. And then there's a background story with one of her ancestors who is a ghost and trying to cause problems in the present day. So these 2 storylines are going back and forth through this whole book. It switches back and forth between those 2 stories. And some people were really confused by it. I mean, I knew it was going on because I always know to look up at the top when they change scenes to see what the scenario is, whether it's the current, if it's a past event. So I always try to keep track of that stuff just because I've read so many of these, graphic novels, these trades. I just know what to look for when I'm reading them. But obviously the person who probably got confused probably isn't used to reading comics, so I could see how they got confused. And when I wrote my review of this on Goodreads, I kind of included that criticism of the book. That they probably should have did those 2 stories as separate books. They could have did the serial killer one and then the ghost one in the present as 2 separate books. It would have made a lot more sense to do it that way. Just for that reason, that's why I only decided to rate this 3 out of 5 stars. They really should have just broke up the stories instead of trying to mix them and cobjob them together like that. Because it just confused a lot of people. But it was a great story. I mean, at times, I was like, oh wow, I was really impressed, and I was thinking 4 stars. But then in retrospect, with all of the whole mix matching of the whole book, I was like, no, this is just a restart. Okay, book. Up next we have Rover Red Charlie, and this is written by Garth Ennis, who is the guy who wrote Preacher. This, the best way to sum up this book would have to be it is a post-apocalyptic, homeward bound, where a world where dogs try to live without humans. That's the best way I can put it, and I gotta be careful what I share with you guys. Because it is Garth Ennis, there are quite a few inappropriate scenes, and it's definitely not safe for work material. It is mature, and it is not for children. So even though it is cute little dogs, it is not for kids. It's basically these three dogs are roaming, and they're trying to find their own way in this new world. I really like this. Well, actually, I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. I will admit, I only gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was cool, but there were some times where I was just like, eh. I thought it was kind of annoying how, like, when the dogs bark, they would say, I'm a dog, over and over again. So, I did only rate this 3 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Warzone's The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. This is written by Dan Slott, and Dan Slott is, he's one of the best Spider-Man writers, I think, that's out there. He wrote SpiderVerse, he wrote Spider Island, and I think he's currently writing Spider-Man, but this is a different Spider-Man, one that has never been before, because, of course, it's one where he and MJ stayed married, and they had a little girl. Her name is Annie, which is not Mayday, like the one Spider-Man version. So this is a totally new version of Spider-Man, and it's on a world where there's this guy called the Regent, and the Regent is out trying to kill and harvest all the heroes so that he can defeat Doom, who is the god, the quote-unquote god of the Secret Wars, the Battle World or whatever. So, this was really interesting. It was, I have to admit, this was definitely action-packed, and it was well worth the read. I was afraid, because I know some of these Secret Wars books are not that good, but this one was really good, and I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely worth checking out. So this is where I'm going to end my weekend review with A-Force Volume 0, War Zones. This one, I guess, started out as an all-female, like, Avengers. I don't know if they're really supposed to be Avengers or if it's A for Arcadia, but they're from the Battle World zone of Arcadia. The She-Hulk is the leader, the Baroness, I guess you could call her, and the majority of this team is all female lineup. I'm gathering that's why they show only females on the cover, but the team is not totally just girls. The Submariner was in this, and a couple other guys I don't remember, but it's obviously highly, female-dominated team. And, of course, there's something going on. Of course, there's Loki, and I won't say anymore because I don't want to spoil it for those who want to read this. It was really just okay. I did rate this 3 out of 5 stars. It was good, but it wasn't great. So, and it involves the Plague Lands, like the Deadlands, where the zombies are. It was decent. If you've read any of these, or if you plan on reading any of these, let me know down below your thoughts on them. And thanks for watching. Until next time, later, guys.